This is new information that's never been given to a workshop before, and it's changed my whole idea about what's happening. It's something that, this is what happened to me in England. You know, I didn't have any real idea what was going on with these crop circles and everything. And when Thos told me I was going to have to go to England, I didn't even really know if I would, or I don't even really, did never even want to. I always thought England was this great place, stuffy, and just didn't want to go. I had no desire to go to England. But just as, you know, they just keep giving you the thing back, I started getting, just in England, I started getting one after another, after another, after another, after another, after another. It was like 7, 8, at least 9 groups over in England trying to get me there all at once, just in England. And I finally succumbed to it and went over there and did a workshop, which was in July of this year, so this just happened. And I was also told that's where I'd meet Merlin. And like I told you, this also was told that once I met Merlin, I would then be reconnected with my children, which I hadn't seen for 7 years. And so, these things with these crop circles, you know, they've been going on for a very, very long time in history, though no one's ever noticed it. Though they began to accelerate about 9 years ago, which had been about 82, somewhere around in there. There was a man named Busty Taylor who I had a 2-hour interview with him in England. He was the first person to see one of the crop circles in England. He was just flying over and he looked down and saw this symbol on the ground. It wasn't this, it was another one. The circles came out, first started out very simple. And there was this circle on the ground, and he had been studying.
We're going to have to change that.
Is a crop circle being formed?
Go out there and all the grass. The rug.
Carpet circle.
Just talking to you.
There was a pin going in their vacuum cleaner cutting. Where was it? Okay, I had this interview with Busty Taylor for about 2 hours in England. And he was the first person to fly over a crop circle in England, at least this is what he says. And when he looked down, he saw this very simple circle on the ground, but he had been studying, he knew and had been studying the Celtic religion, and he saw it as a Celtic symbol. And so at one point he went back down the ground and looked at it, and it was so perfectly made and everything that he became interested in it, and then he started seeing another one, then another one, then another one. They started happening all over. And it depends on who you talk to. There's been somewhere between 1,000 and 2,000 crop circles in the last 9 years in England. And they're becoming more and more and more complex. This crop circle here was one that happened, I think, in 1990. And when Richard Hoagland analyzed this crop circle, lo and behold, it did the same thing as the information on Mars. It described a star tetrahedron inscribed in a sphere. The same bit of information found on Earth that was found on Mars. This crop circle happened, I believe, in 1991, I think. Perhaps 92, I can't remember.
91.
I think 91. And this is this one. As you can see, they kept getting more and more complex. They first started as simple circles, and then they started getting more and more and more complex. This is a very complex one. I just understand that just a few days ago, the most complex circle in the entire history of crop circles on the Earth just happened in England. And still wondering what it's all about, I think. It was huge, enormous, extremely complex, so I guess we'll find out what that one is when it comes out. But this one, again, many people have analyzed it. Richard Hoagland, another one who's had people looking at this one, is very definitely tetrahedral geometry. So the other one was talking about star tetrahedrals, and this one is not just a third dimensional, but fourth dimensional. If you notice, there's a little bend right here, and the amount that it is bent, and the amount that this circle is off-center, etc., and all these things, relate exactly to a fourth dimensional hyperspace tetrahedron. And so, I mean, the kinds of mathematics that are in here are very high-level mathematics. I don't think this is something Doug and Dave could have figured out. But they're truly extraordinary things. I mean, we're now seeing, when you look at these crop circles, and I'll try to, let me see what, okay, this is stone. This is a brand new, I just laid all these out on the light table, and I had since I've never given this before, but at the moment I had an idea, so I have to think about this. So I'm going to come back to you just in a little bit, and I'll go into the details of it. See how this is out in the flower of life pattern? If you just complete this, you have that inner loop in there. So I'm just going to give it in story form pretty much what happened when I worked there. This is Stonehenge. After I gave the workshop, which really nothing much happened, except it was an interesting workshop, but nothing happened at the workshop the whole time I was over there. And it all began when I got here. The only thing the angels told me to do was to go to Stonehenge, and that was it. And I didn't know other than that what to do. I went to Stonehenge. I discovered that you can't get into Stonehenge. They got it all roped off, and they only let you walk around the outside of it. And I knew a few things about it. The Stonehenge is based on a five-pointed star, a five-pointed star facing up and one pointing down. And the arrangement of the stones and where they put them is all on that configuration. And it has these circles and concentric circles that move away from it. My first experience there was interesting to me because I'm very sensitive to rotating fields. But in all the world, I'd only found one rotating field that I don't mean just a vortex, which is a rotating field, but I mean like these sustained rotational patterns of concentric rings and things. I only found that once before, and that was in Peru at Sacsayhuaman. And that place was incredible. You went in the middle of this pattern that was laid out. There was little tiny grass here. There was grass, and in the middle of the grass was a little thing about this big around of grass that was green, and everything else was brown, right in the center. And when you stepped into it and you talked, you're on a hill, there's nothing around. But when you talked, your voice would echo back at you dramatically, just as if you were in a big glass cage. You'd say hello, and go, hello, 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 like that. And for everybody, they would go in there, they said, stand here and say something. They couldn't believe it. And there was this big, huge field rotating around this thing. It's really amazing. This one also had concentric rings, but in a way I've never seen anywhere else before. You'd feel these rotating fields that would be rotating around like a ring going around it, and it would be about 6 to 8 to 10 feet wide, and you would walk through it, and suddenly it would be rotating the other way. It would be a thin membrane. You could put your hand through it and back. It would be rotating one way and rotating the other. It's a super thin membrane. And I've seen this in vortex fields before, but I've never seen such perfect ones. They were like, it felt like they were really perfect. And there was a whole series of rings that went away from there. And I don't know how far out it went. They wouldn't let us go very far because everything's roped off. They guide you like cattle, where you can go and where you can't go. Has anybody been to...
The apiary?
What?
Have you been to the apiary?
Yeah, we're going to talk about that next. Has anybody been to the mystery spot in California?
Santa Cruz.
Santa Cruz? You have?
I haven't.
You've been there? She has a big smile. Yeah, you've been there? Just a couple people? If you ever get a chance, check this out. The membrane in that vortex is the same way. You put your hand through one side, it's like a thin membrane. Stick it through one side, you feel it come out the other side. It's totally different. And it's this huge, huge rotating vortex that goes up in the sky. All the trees are twisted around like this and that. And there's a huge distortion when you go from one side to the other, perceptual distortion. They have a piece of concrete slab that's about this wide and about this long, and a little line down the middle, and the membrane passes right through there. And so on one side you're inside the vortex, and the other side you're not. And you can get two people, and I did this, you get two persons, same height, and they got a level on the ground there built in. You can bring your own level if you want. You can level, you see that it's absolute level, and looks level, looks flat, and everything. And you stand on it, and you look at the other person at your same height, and the one in the vortex, you look down at them. They're at least 3 inches shorter. And then you reverse it around the other way, and you're looking up at them. They're suddenly 3 inches taller than you. And it's weird. And
Do you know the cause of that?
I don't know exactly what's going on. You know, when you get into vortexes, you could get dimensional kinds of things going on. I don't know the dynamics of it or anything. It's real easy to experience it. You can feel that everything, you walk down here and everything's like at an angle, you know. I mean, everything's distorted, in a real strange way. But anyway, you have a similar kind of thing here, except they're real perfect rings where one goes one way, one goes the other way, one goes the other way, and you can feel this changes. So I experienced that for a little bit, thought that was interesting. Not much happening. So I went around the side over here somewhere, and I sat down, and they got kind of like a horseshoe, and I went down to one end of the horseshoe where I wouldn't have a lot of people walking around, and I sat down, and I just went into meditation for a while. And I just sat there probably for 45 minutes or an hour or something like that, because I didn't have anything to do. I mean, there was nowhere to go. That was it. Whatever was going to happen was supposed to happen there, so no sense walking around. I figured it's going to have to come to me somewhere. So I sat down and just waited. And finally, I didn't, nothing happened. And I finally said inside myself, well, what's next? You know, and I got this voice that came in very clearly inside of my head, that this real strong male English voice in this old English accent that I could barely understand just said one word, apiary. And I knew at that moment that that's what I was supposed to do next, but I had no idea where apiary was. I mean, it could have been on the other end of England. I didn't know. I didn't know where I was or nothing. It was hard enough getting to Stonehenge. And so we went outside and said, I don't know, I'm supposed to go to apiary. We look on the map and it's just a little ways away. It's not very far. It's about 45 minutes away. So we go up to apiary. And I don't really know much about apiary. I mean, to me, that was just, it just really wasn't anything that I just haven't studied it or know anything about it. This is still Stonehenge. This is as close as you can get to Stonehenge. They do have one place where you can walk pretty close to the outside, and then they make you go a lot further away. This is an aerial shot that I took of apiary. It's the largest stone circle in Europe. It's big. As you can see, there's a whole village that runs through the middle of it. And the fact that village runs through the middle of it is an important part of the story. There's a mound that's outside here. It goes around the outside, and it's huge. It goes way up. And there's a big gully cut all the way around here. This mound is solid white chalk. Though there's dirt over it now, it used to be solid white glowing from the sky all the way around in here. And there's a stone circle that goes around the outer edge. And then originally there was another stone circle in here and another stone circle in here. And this stone circle had the letter D in it. There was an inward flow and an exit. There was an in, what's the word?
Inlet and outlet.
An inlet and outlet. Right, there we go. Kind of like this road. And these were the two main entryway stones over here. Just wanted to get you an aerial view so you could kind of see what was going on here.
And originally there was a direct connection to Stonehenge. There was a causeway with stones lining up, connecting the two.
Well, that has never been proven yet, actually. We'll talk about those stones. They don't know how far they went. From everything I've read, anyway, there is this curving thing of stones. Right now, it only goes for about a mile. Everything I read, they said that it went for about. They believed that it once went for about 40 miles. And Stonehenge probably is about 40 miles away, but they don't know. They find. When I get to that, I'll show you. Where. This is this mound that's on the outside. So when you get actually down on the ground, you can see that this thing is really high. You can see people up here, and it's a big mound. It goes way down on the ground and comes up over. And here's the stones up over here. And here you can kind of see these stones. They're, a person. This is not a good one to tell. A person would probably be to about here. About that point right there. The stones are about 2 to 3 times the height of a person, usually. I guess they're all different sizes in there. These are the 2 stones that are the 2 massive stones where the entryway comes in. We'll have to wait to explain what entryway means. The understanding of this entryway is a key to understanding everything just about what's going on in the world right now, in a lot of ways. It's of major importance. And these stones are really massive. That stone over there, this one back here, is on the other side of it. This is me seeing that stone so you can see how big it is. And these stones had places like cups up on top that were carved into them. Some of them did, not all of them, some of them. With little crevices, so some kind of liquid would come out, pour down, and pour on top of the person, which was some form of initiation. I haven't studied it enough to know exactly what it is, but it was only certain stones that they had this kind of thing going on. We're looking down now through the entryway where this energy enters in. It comes down and is guided through to these 2 stones over here. Notice there's a Christian church right through that entryway, passing over here. That's very important when we explain something later. In between the church and here is where an inner stone circle is, and there's the letter D is right in here. And then on the opposite side of that, straight over on the other side of the church, is where there's this 90-degree turn that takes place. Here's that church over here again. These are these 2 big stones. You can see this entering in back through here. Farther over here in the circle, way over there, let me see what this next one is. I have no idea either. Okay. Well, I'll go ahead and explain this right now. These stones, which are huge, they don't look like much when you're right here. Those 2 entryway stones that we just saw, there's a whole line of stones that Richard was talking about that were massive, that are separated by the distance of about the width of this room here, which is, I don't know, 40 feet or so between them. They are just lined like this in a snake-like pattern going away from Avebury and just stretching out over the horizon. They don't know how far they've gone. The farmers have mostly collected them up, and but they keep finding them way out there, and they'll find one every once in a while here and there that are, that are really old. So this pathway probably did go a long ways. At the moment, it only goes for 3/4 of a mile or a mile at the most away from Avebury. But that pathway of stones is an important part in all this too. This is a stone that's at Avebury. I believe it's called the Merlin stone. And I was pulled to this stone before I even knew there was such a thing. And this is one side of it. This is the other side of it. If you look at it, you can see like a face up here. Something like this person, and this whole thing in here. And I was pulled to this stone. I was just walking. The very first thing that happened, I just walked in. I was just an innocent little kid looking around. And the stone got me. And I started walking toward this stone. I walked, and as I got close to the stone, I went, so I missed the stone. I sort of slid down the stone and went into meditation right here, and I just was knocked out for about 45 minutes. And Merlin came in before anything ever even happened. I didn't even have a chance to even look around. And he came in, and he started speaking in this old English accent where I had to like really listen because it was so strange. And the first thing that he said to me, and he's speaking not in words but really, but the sound is there, but it's holographic. He says to me, "Thank you for joining the program." And when he said that, it meant all kinds of stuff to me. I saw the images of crop circles and all this stuff like that. And I knew that the program meant these things with these crop circles and this whole thing. And he said that I was communicating with his ancient or old aspect, though, and that the one that I was with before was his new one. I had been with Merlin for 1.5 years. I knew him real well. Spent almost every day with him. And we became very good friends. And that's another whole story. And so now I'm now communicating with like an unfamiliar component of him. He just said that it was the same person, but an ancient aspect of who he was. And it was the Merlin that was associated with Arthur and Guinevere. Now there have been many Merlins. There's not one Merlin, there's many of them. And the Merlin is the head or the leader of the Druids. It's like the Dalai Lama is the head of just depending who you're talking to, of the Tibetans. Tibetan Buddhism, well, the Merlin is the head of the Druids, and the Druid religion was the religion of the Celtics. The Celtics were a very powerful and big body of people at one time. They weren't just in England. They were in England and Ireland and Scotland and Wales and over most of Europe. They were huge. They spread out over a huge area. And the Druids had a very powerful influence on them. The Druids came from Egypt. They say that. They came, as I understand it, but I've got to verify it more, about 500 BC. They emerged, that's when they emerged out of there. They came out of there at the same time that the Coptics came forth and the Essene Brotherhood came forth, and all of them came out of Egypt. Coptics, the Essenes, and the Druids. And all simultaneously, in conjunction with each other, working together. The Druids brought with them from Egypt the Isis religion, the feminine component of Egypt. Whereas Egypt was masculine, they were bringing to England the feminine component. And where they came first was a little island called Avalon at Glastonbury. At that time, Glastonbury, England, was, all that area was underwater, and there were 7 little islands that were there. It was a port. And there was a little hill, which is called the Tor, on the island of Avalon, where on top of that hill was the primary stone circle, which was the mystery school of Merlin and the head of the Druid school. Merlin began to tell me all kinds of things about this place of Avebury. He said it was the most important circle in England, that it was more important than Stonehenge or anywhere else. It was the most important one. And he went on and on to tell me all kinds of things that I still have to verify and understand. And for about 45 minutes, but real rapid stuff. And then he began to talk about the crop circles and said that he was doing them. Along with Doug and Dave.
He and him.
And he didn't, when he meant he, the image was not him, but the ascended masters of the planet, of which he was part of. But it was an unusual image, and I didn't understand it. It took me a while to understand what he really meant. And that's, in fact, when he said he's doing them, that's what most of what I'm going to be trying to direct you is what I mean by who he's talking about. Because there's something going on here that, if it's true, it changes everything. And then he said, I will prove it to you. It's one thing I've always liked about Merlin. He doesn't mess around. He just does it, man. He doesn't talk, he just does it. He's all the time I was with him for that year and a half. If he said something was going to happen, if he said it's going to go rain, man, you go get a raincoat because it's going to happen.
You mean clothes?
And no, this is Merlin. I worked with Merlin for a year and a half, long, long time ago, back in about 1971 through 72, maybe into 73. I'm not sure when it ended. He was the first one that, he was the first like interdimensional teacher, I think, that I ever had. I believe he was. And he then told me that I had to go to Silbury Hill. I didn't really know where that was either. I didn't know it was just like right over the hump over here. He said I had to go to Silbury Hill and climb on top of it. So, just next. What's this? Oh, that's just a crop circle that you can see from... Oh no, that's not, that is the groups. Okay, I gotta remember how I told this story. I laid them out in the things like that. The next thing he told me was, I'll prove it to you. I'll prove that what I'm doing is this. And so he told me to go to Silbury Hill. We went on top of Silbury Hill, which I'm going to talk about in a little bit. And then we went home. That was it. By that was the evening time. I'll go back to the Silbury Hill thing a little bit. We went home. We went to Swindon, which is a little place right near Avebury, and spent the night. Next morning, I got up and immediately went over and called a woman named Barbara Davis, who was the head of the networking for crop circles in England. She's written lots of papers and things. And everybody, she has a hotline, crop circle hotline, you call in, and everybody calls in, and they immediately have airplanes that fly out and photograph everything. Because a lot of times those crop circles happen, as soon as the farmers find out of it, they immediately go plow them down, because they don't want anybody to know about them, so get rid of them. There's a lot of reasons why, I'll explain in a minute. But, so they immediately got planes that go out there and do it. So we were sitting there I called her up, we started talking, we got along really well, she's a really nice person. And we're talking for a while, and I don't know why I said it. I didn't have any intention of actually saying this, but I said, well, has there ever been a Vesica Pisces in the crop circle? My thought was, well, I don't, where's the pure sacred geometry in crop circles? Why is that not pure? That's what I don't quite understand. And so I said, has there ever been, and that's the simplest of all geometry, so I said, why is there, has there ever been a Vesica Pisces? And she thought for a moment, she says, no. Out of all the 2,000 crop circles is what she said. That's what she puts the number at. The 2,000 crop circles that have been in England, there's never been a Vesica Pisces that she knows of. And so we changed the subject and started talking about other things. A little while later, maybe 10 minutes later, she says, oh, by the way, you're up by Swindon. She's 150 miles away in Cornwall. And she says, you're up by Swindon. A crop circle was just formed last night, right near where you are. She says, would you go over there and look at it? Nobody's been there yet. Just go in and look at it, get an image of it, call me back and let me know what it is. And so she gave these instructions, and I said, sure. Of course I'm going to go to the crop circle. That's what I came there for. And so I immediately jumped in the car, and I was with this woman who was, she was Irish, and she considers herself a pagan, which is what the Celtic religion is, and she was very connected to that way of thinking. And we drove, we had these instructions, and we followed the instructions. We drove to where it was supposed to be. And it was supposed to be in this field, and we look out there, there's nothing there. So I was totally bewildered for a moment. And so I figured, well, maybe it's the mirror image or something. I tried that. I tried looking all over, and I finally just tried driving all over the place, and we spent 3 hours looking for this crop circle. And finally, we pulled over the side of the road and said, I just pulled over and said, I don't know if there is a crop circle. If there is, I can't find it. But I think we're going to have to go back and call Barbara and get new things. I said, I don't know where this thing is. And she goes, I know what's wrong. I said, what? She said, you forgot to ask permission. I said, oh yeah. I mean, when she said that, my American Indians feeling came back through the course. I mean, you can't do these kind of things without asking permission. So she goes in and she prays. And she prays for about 15 minutes. She comes back out. She says, okay, it's okay now. We can do it. I said, okay. I'm in a little English car with 5-speed or whatever it is. I go through first gear, second gear. I'm still in third gear. We just pull down the road. In third gear, we look over, and there's a crop circle. That praying stuff really works. And there it is. We could see it from the road. And but I couldn't tell exactly what it was or anything else like that. So we climbed over the fence and went over there. And this is it from the air. It's the Vesica Pisces. Now this is after people have walked through it for 2 weeks and smashed it down. But we were the first person in that circle that was fresh and clean. And this circle was flawless, and that circle was flawless, and this whole thing was flawless. And I walked in there, and I walked in from this little path right here, which I made. There was no other pathways in there. Came in, walked into here, and at first I couldn't tell what it was. And I walked over there, and I go, wow, this is a Vesica Pisces. And I go, wow, this is right out of my drawing. This is the eye. This is the central, the whole thing right out of there. And over here, this was originally, though it's been trampled down, this was 2 equilateral triangles with a sphere, which is one of the keys to the Vesica Pisces. And I haven't analyzed this whole thing. I don't know what the heck all this stuff is. But it was so remarkable. I mean, I was so excited I couldn't hardly talk. Look how this is. This is whirled down. It's rotated down. It's not somebody in here stamping these things down. It comes from a central point and they're spun around. And they are not broken down but they are grown in position. There's a little tiny piece that comes over and grows, and so the whole thing lays down. Many times, these things are actually woven like hair. Oh, I didn't see those, but I've seen photographs of them. I've even saw one where it was woven one way, then woven the other way underneath, and then woven the other way underneath. These intricate patterns. And so this is when we first walked in. First thing, this is the road where we were on over there. They put it right near a freeway. Which happens to be a spot that's visible all night long. And it was just, they're really extremely accurate when you see these things. Let me come back to this one for a moment. The feeling of a rotating field, this kind of feeling that I got, that I felt around Stonehenge, and I was also feeling the Avebury, by the way, I felt around these crop circles. It was really powerful. In fact, it's so powerful that many people, when they go into these things, they get sick. You read about it over and over and over again, because I started to read people that had various experiences on this. Because it's like you get, your equilibrium gets off, and you feel like you've got the flu symptoms or something. You get sick from it. And what Busty said, and I didn't have the chance because we didn't get this until, I don't know what it was, the last day or the day before the last day or something like that. What Busty told me is that all you got to do is go in there with a compass, and it'll spin in the direction that the hay is sweeps down. Obviously, if you got a compass spinning in your hand, that's not just something you want. I mean, there's got to be something more than just somebody planting the hay. And some of these circles, by the way, are hundreds. Some of them are 200-300 feet around, and they're perfect. You'd have to have a pretty long string. They're perfect. And there's sometimes only one of them is 200 and something feet around, and it's only 2 inches wide. And no footprints or not a single hair or stalk is touched. I'm going to tell me, how are you going to make a 200 and something foot circle in a person like you and me? How are you going to make a 200-foot circle in there without touching the ground? Because you obviously can't walk in that. Practice. Very carefully. Only the transcendental meditator can do it. From the air. It's the teamers. They're out there making progress. So,
It's a Maharishi effect.
but it really affects your emotional body. At least it affected mine. And especially the very first time I went in one, I got really excited, and then I felt this. My heart started opening, and I realized when I was sitting there that I'm not in something that just happened, but we're looking. You know, you always look at these old things, you know, like the burning bush and all these things that happened in the past and all the stuff that goes on in the past. But that doesn't happen to us. That's in the past. But it's right there. You know, and that's different. And I got so emotional, I couldn't help it. This woman got out in the car and cried for about 45 minutes after the road, but she wouldn't stop. And she said, and it's really strong. This is another one that happened while we were there. We were allowed, John Partel and I got in a little airplane and flew around and looked at some of these other ones that were happening around. This one actually I think we went into. This one was near Avebury also. And that other one was not too far from Avebury. And each one of these circles is rotating in a different direction. this one out here is rotating one way, and that one in there is rotating another way. And so it's all this rotational energy associated with it. Here you can see Richard and Terry knocking at the door. See Richard and Terry here, and you can see this again, this rotating field going around and around and around. And there's me in one of these fields. I don't know which one this was. This was the one near Airport also.
You said they grew sideways.
Huh?
You said they grew sideways.
And most of them, if you look very, very closely, there's a tape that's out that I got it actually, but I haven't even seen it. Though it's called Undeniable Evidence by Colin Andrews. And they have shown how the stalks are actually grown in place and not pushed down, and that there's an actual chemical change inside the stalks that is extremely unusual. And that and I have to actually look at this tape before I can talk at it more. But from their point of view, it's absolutely, the title is Undeniable Evidence. I guess they feel that it is because of the way that they are grown. They're not just pushed down.
These happen overnight.
They happen from sometime between the time that it gets dark and the time the sun rises. And the experiences that people have had all over England are interesting. In the hotel that I was in Swindon, the manager said, "Oh, we just had a Japanese team here." And he says, and he goes to tell me that that they had just set up their instruments in a field near Avebury, which that's where many of them are happening. And they had this whole area around Avebury where they had set up their instruments. These instruments were able to see with infrared and everything else. They had all kinds of cameras going on. He said they could see a mouse walk through that field at nighttime, and they waited. And the next morning, there was a crop circle right in the middle of it. They never saw a thing. Their cameras did pick up nothing at all. But what a lot of people have said, and read some of the books and experiences of many different people, is they'll go out in these fields and sit there at night. And if you tune to it, there's 3 experiences that have occurred over and over and over again. And the first one is the primary one. They'll see the sphere of light, anywhere from so big to sometimes real big, come out of the earth, from underneath the surface, come out of the earth, come over, hover over a field, and you'll have this high-pitched humming sound, this whirling sound, and the crop circle is formed, and then it goes back into the earth. Another one is these spheres of light will come out of the sky, come down, and the same whirling sound form the image and go back into the sky. And the other one that happens not very often, but occasionally, is a vehicle comes down that looks more like a traditional flying saucer and forms these things. But that's a rare experience. It's usually these spheres of light that are coming either from within the earth or above the earth, but almost always from in the earth, from everything I've read.
How long does it stay?
Indefinitely until the farmer comes and harvests the fields. Now the fact that the crops are in crops, the crop circles are in crops, is a crucial thing to understand what's going on. And not in dirt or something like this. They're in crops. Now they have been done in snow. Of course, whether or not they're real or not, I don't know. They have been found in sand. Whether or not they're real or not, I don't know. There are a lot of fakes in these circles. There are people who want to discredit this and are doing everything they can to make fakes everywhere. What did they do? They had Doug and Dave come up. And the whole world, I mean, in England, they really think that that was a direct government intervention by those two guys. They went and said, we're doing it. All the media focused on them, all over the world. And in other words, they were putting out to the world, this is the answer, it's Doug and Dave. And then they pulled the plug, and now you won't see a crop circle in any newspaper anywhere hardly anymore. They act like it didn't happen. No, they won't even talk about it. The answer's already been given, it's Doug and Dave, and they won't discuss it anymore. And it works. For most people in the world, they just have turned their attention somewhere else. There's still somewhere around, what is it, I don't know, somewhere between 100 and 200 crop circles every year are being formed. Over 2,000 crop circles have been formed. But just in England alone, not counting the rest of the world. And yet, you don't hear anything about it except in underground papers and stuff, but no longer does the outer news media discuss this subject at all. And so when they go out and look at these things, they look to see, you know, if it's man-made or not. And the vast majority of them, the people in England, just say are fakes. If they think there's even one little thing, the tiniest little thing, that maybe it's a fake, they'll just call it fake. Because they're afraid that somebody will prove that one of them that they say is right isn't, and then they'll discredit the whole thing. That's what they're afraid of. And so usually only about 1 out of 10 gets called a real one. Yeah.
Well, crops are something, we eat the crops, we ingest the crops, and it seems like this is knowledge that for the earth to digest, to ingest, to absorb, or do you have any idea why they're always in crops?
Yeah, I have a real strong feeling about it. She said, she says, well, we eat the crops and we ingest this food, and is this like ingesting knowledge? Or, is that what you said? There may be a metaphor in that, but I think there's something else, and this is what I think is going on. Let me see what the next slide is so I can get an idea here. Okay, well, this is just another crop circle. This again is huge. It's a big field. This is another one that I think this is the first one the filming crew went into. I think wasn't this it? Was this the first one?
That's true. We did go in one that had that big ball that's a...
Yeah, this is the swirl
Yeah,
that she
it
went
is.
into.
Yes, it
It
is.
is.
And it had the letter M off one side with these 3 little circles that come off there.
That's a spiral.
Yeah, it's a spiral when you're in there. And that whole thing is whirled into a spiral. Where were we?
Wine crops.
Oh, wine crops. Okay, good. Thank you. To understand that, you have to go back and look at the very first crop circles. In fact, almost all of them, about a very large percentage, I don't know exactly what percentages, but a very large percentage of the crop circles are Coptic symbols. Ancient Coptic symbols. And so Avebury is a Copt, and all the stone circles, Avebury and Stonehenge and all these are Coptic circles. Yeah. What? Oh, I'm sorry. Celtic. I'm sorry. Erase all that. A large portion of all these crop circles that are being formed are Celtic. They say Celtic there, not Celtic. And even though it starts with a C. And they're Celtic and or Druid symbols. And so in order to kind of understand what's going on, you've got to look at the Druid religion. I don't think that it's possible to understand what's going on without understanding the Druid religion. I don't think it's possible. First of all, the Druid religion was a nature religion. Its main belief is that the earth is a living being and alive, that it was female, and that it was a mommy, and that it had a personality in the cosmos. It was conscious like a person, and that we lived on Earth. They also believed that the sun was alive, and that it was a male, it was daddy, and that it was conscious and had a personality in the cosmos, just like a person. They believed that they watched Mommy Earth and saw all the creation processes that were going on, and all the growing things, and the trees, and the waters, and everything. And they felt that the processes that went on the earth were sacred. And so the religions all revolved around these creative processes. To them, they also felt, I'll try to explain that a little bit. They also believed that heaven was not up, but down. Heaven was in earth, in the middle of the earth, toward the center. And that when we died, we went down into the earth, and we went back into Mommy. I remember when they gave me my name, when they gave me back my name that I already had. My name was given to me, Drunvalo Melchizedek, 21 years ago, but I couldn't use it for a long. They told me I couldn't use it until they told me to, which was about 8 years ago. At the same time they told me to teach, I had to use my name. And 21 years ago or so, they gave me the name, and they said it was a Druid name, and that Drunvalo was a little tree that grew by a creek. And so there must be a Drunvalo tree. But as I progressed through the Alpha and Omega order of Melchizedek and got the image of the Melchizedek consciousness that was out there, I had a conflict in my mind trying to understand how, I could understand how Drunvalo was a Druid name, but I couldn't understand how Melchizedek was a Druid name. That was something I've always had this thing in my head. I knew it was important, but I could never understand it. And so at one point I started reading one of the Druid books, trying to understand while I was over there what it was about. And from their point of view, they would ascend, they would resurrect or ascend toward the center of the earth, not away. And that it was the Druid belief that in the center of the earth was Melchizedek. And at that point, then I began to understand which is what my belief was anyway as I came in here, was as above, so below. What is inside is what's out here, and the two ends are really one. And that was a real powerful confirmation on a lot of levels for me, that I was heading in the right direction with all of this. And so, getting back to this nature thing, so they saw like the wells, the water wells and the holes as the openings into heaven. And the stones, they saw them as being alive, as being spirits. They saw the trees as being alive and conscious and were people that could think and feel. And they communicated with them, and they were very close to them. They listened very carefully to the processes and made sure that they didn't do anything to harm the earth. Everything was in harmony with the earth. But they only knew how to ascend one way, and that was descend. They only knew how to go into the earth. And at one point in the Druid religion, they became aware that there was another way, and this other way was essential for the completion of all things. This is my interpretation of this. So, at one point, the Druids came out of Egypt, after Akhenaten, and the preparations that took place there. And they knew that the Christ would come, that Jesus would come, and they had to prepare for the coming of Jesus. So the Essene Brotherhood went one way, the Coptics went one way, and the Druids went into England, and they began to set up this whole pattern of Isis, the feminine pattern. They laid it all down, and they kept laying it down and waiting for this time that they knew would come hundreds of years in the future. And then Jesus came, and he did what he had to do. And according to the records of Glastonbury, when Jesus was 12 years old, Joseph of Arimathea, who was his uncle, who was a rich tin miner, took Jesus by boat to the island of Avalon, where he studied at the Druid school, and then brought him back. There is another record saying he came the second time, but there's controversy over that, whether he came the second time or not. Whether or not he came, even if you believe it or not, there is very powerful circumstantial evidence that that's happened, that did happen, because of what I'm about to say. After Jesus died, if we assume the calendars are correct, in 33 AD, it was 6 years later, I believe it was 39 AD, Joseph of Arimathea went back to the island of Avalon, and the Druids gave Joseph 12 hides of land. No one knows exactly what that is, but it was a portion of land. And this portion of land sat at the very base of this hill, right where the primary Druid mystery school light. It was where the Merlin was. It was the main place of the whole Celtic religion. And right at the base of that thing, they gave the Christians a place to begin their religion. So the Druids started the seed that began the whole thing, just as the Essene Brotherhood really started the seed because they gave the very body of the whole thing. And the Coptics supported both. And so they gave him this piece of land, and Joseph formed 12 little circular houses with the 13th one in the middle, and it became the first church in the world of Christ. It later became known, it later was all put into stone and became the Abbey at Glastonbury, which became the largest church in the world. I don't know, it may even still, if the whole thing was there. I don't know exactly compared it to other ones, but this thing was huge. It was enormous. It was really, really big.
It was the largest Gothic structure ever built.
The largest one ever built? Yeah, well, I believe it, because it was so, I couldn't believe how big this thing was. It was enormous. By 200 AD, it was the most influential church in the world. And the monks that came out of there, which I think were Benedictine monks, the monks that came out of there spread out all over the world. And you might say, in fact, I guess you could say, that every church on the planet, every Christian church on the planet was seated from a singular place. Even the one that when Peter, who was the rock, who was the disciple of Jesus, went to Rome to start his church there, the main church that became the Vatican, there was already a church built there. When he got there, there was already a stone church built there, which came out of the Abbey of Glastonbury. And so you can see the kind of influence that this one church had. And the whole growth of this church and the expansion of this church and everything that was going on with it was with the blessings of the Druids. It couldn't have happened without them. It was with their giving and their watering all the time. In fact, literal watering, because there was two springs that came out of this hill, out of the Tor, the main place. One of them was called the Red Spring, which had this iron water in it. Realize springs were holy and sacred to the Druids, especially certain ones. And this red spring coming out of there was the holiest one of all. And there was another white spring that came out along the side. And these two springs came down and crossed and blended, and finally ran right through the abbey at Glastonbury, which is in there, which is built right into the church. And it's from this water that the first baptisms of Christianity took place. So it was from the Druid blood, as they saw it, that our baptisms began, the Christian baptisms. It was with their blessing. Stonehenge was 444, which has to do with ascension. And to me, what that means is the school of ascension. It's the place where you learn how to do it. And Avebury was 555, which was the place where it happened. That's where you became that with Christ. And this hill was 666. It didn't mean evil. That isn't what they referred to. They meant to it that it was the earth. It was the denseness. It was the passions of the earth, sexual energy, and it was related to those flows. 2 or 3 days after he told me that, let me see if this crop circle formed in the air, formed in the ground. This looks like 3 comets. But from inside the earth looking out, and this is a key, it's 666. And no one knew what it was, but I knew exactly what it was. And I knew what it meant. And it refers to the, and this was found right near, just a little tiny ways away from Silbury Hill. Though I didn't know about it until almost 12 days later or something of that nature. The other component of this is called the West Kennet Longburrow, which is down here. And this is really old. It goes back to 3,500 BC. Considering that civilization as we know only started at 3,800 BC, this is really old. And the very most interesting thing I found out about this whole thing is that it goes back inside for 40, 50 feet, and then it's sealed off and it goes for a quarter mile along this Longburrow. There's all these rooms and chambers in there, and in 6,000 years nobody's built it. Nobody's touched it. They've left it alone. Whoever put the protection field up for that gets an A+. I mean, nobody messed around with that thing for all that time. It's amazing, and they still have it. And even the Christians were very careful about it. You see, I'm kind of doing this a little bit different than I've told this before. I'm laying out the components, and I'm not telling you what it's all about yet. These 2 stones, remember them, they are not part of this whole thing. They were placed there by the Christians, not by the Druids. The rest of them were placed there, it was all done by the Druids, or the Celtics before them. Now, this is the opening to this. This is that big stone that's here, and you're looking into it. And this is looking out of it at that stone. You can see the stone blocks the entryway. So something can't get in. This is it. Okay. Let me see what the next one is. You can barely see this. I'm going to tell you what this is. You can stand here looking out for right now. I think now I'm going to have to, before I go any further, this is not going to make sense until I tie something in that is the key to all of this. And then I can go back and close it. What's going on here. I'm going to come down into this component down here. And in England, if this was the country of England, I don't know if this is a good thing of it, there is a line that runs from what's called Land's End along England up to this other fur point. They go right off the ends here. It's an absolute straight line called a ley line that is drawn along this end of southern England. It is run at 27 degrees.
It hops across that, the channel and hooks into Saint-Michel.
Well, actually, the line goes around the entire planet. It goes everywhere. From that one point, this one line will eventually pass through 83,000 sacred sites everywhere on the planet. But it passes through England in this one way. And it's a ley line is not an energy line. This is a misconception of Americans. It is a straight sight of line that you can see. And the energy lines move around the ley line. They move in and around it and all over it. That line has a particular energy moving around it, and in order to start talking about it, we've got to go back to Egypt. You remember the two holes in Egypt that come out of the flower of life, the grid, the thing holds the whole the Christ consciousness grid. There's two energy lines that come out and spiral around, and by the time they get to the king's going too fast here. The Great Pyramid, they're one line because they approximate each other, and they don't come. They don't come out flat on the ground. The three pyramids are in three different heights, and they come out of the ground about 2 blocks away from it. Come out of the ground, hit the lower pyramid, come hit the next one, hit the next one. So it's curving up into the air, like that. It then curves over the top. This is according to Merlin now. And it then dives back into the earth. And they begin to make this motion, going along this absolute straight line that goes out from there, going along this curving motion, but in and out. And after a while, you see these two lines are alive. They're the consciousness, you might say, of the planet. They begin to go sideways, occasionally go up like this, and sometimes go sideways, but always going along the straight line. And every once in a while, they'll make a 90-degree turn and start going in another direction. And they're also, these two lines separate and begin to do all kinds of interesting motions, moving like this and over and around and doing all these things, but never moving more than about 500 meters away from these absolute straight lines that you can draw on the planet. And these straight lines form the grid that go all over the whole planet. And the energy lines move all along, moving all over, doing this whole thing, all over the whole planet, and the same thing. The whole planet is woven with these same two lines. Now, I don't know if it's the two lines only at the North Pole, or if there's two lines coming out of the South Pole. This is a detail I need to know. If they also extend out of there, Moray, and they do it down there, or if they only come out of the North Pole. I don't know that one detail yet. And but as they cross England, that one primary ley line is that one that moves through there. So as these two lines, let me get these, we'll use red and green. You have this one little line coming like this, moving across England. You have the other one coming like this, moving across England. And wherever they cross, that's where your sacred sites are. And that's where the stone circles were. The crossing of those lines were so exact that they could pinpoint. There were very, very exact spots, and they were the centers of these circles. So you had all these stone circles running across England, and these precise, very precise. Well, it's not a precise pattern; it's like an organic pattern. They were all within 500 meters, or right on the ley line. Avebury was in the exact center of the ley line, right in the center. And it was the primary point in all of England. These lines were called the dragon lines by the Celtics. Later, in modern day times, they're called, the ley line is now called the St. Michael ley line. I'll explain that in a minute. And the two lines are called the Michael and Mary lines in modern day times. They had other names a long time ago. One was male and one was female. And they were the key to the currents of the earth. So let's explain what happens with these lines as they come in through into Avebury. We'll just look at this for a moment. These two, well, the purple line, let's see. The purple line will be the male, and the green line will be the female. This purple line comes and passes through the sanctuary like this, which is the male line. The green line comes, the female line comes and passes through this sanctuary. And this is not drawn to proportion here. It doesn't matter that much. And it crosses right there and comes down like this and heads toward the West Kennet Longborough. The male line comes over here, and we can't really connect these things because they're more distance apart, and enters in to this stone thing here, coming in and heads toward Avebury. This is the male line. I'll just have to from here and connect it together. The female line comes down here and enters right in through the West Kennet Longborough and runs right down it. The West Kennet Longborough is a vagina. It's the only way that I can say it. It's literally that in their eyes. Over here is a sacred spring, that it passes right through the sacred spring, of the eye to heaven, and then it comes right here and passes through Silbury Hill, and this is a breast. And from here it reconnects with the male line, and the two of them come moving down this channel that has been linked coming into here. So let me talk about these two places here. The whole thing was tied to 4 days of the year when the 4 different seasons, the 4 times when the creative energies peak. The primary one was on May 5th through May 7th. It's when the sun angle, is that what it was, at 15 degrees? I can't remember, a certain time. And at that moment, on that sacred day, the Druids and the Celtics, the populace, would, at that moment, that's when the male energy of the sun would reunite, of daddy, would reunite with the female or the mommy energy. And that was the moment of springtime. And it was the most sacred moment because that's when all the creative energies would return into the earth. And so they were just tuning to it. These the dragon lines would increase in intensity at that moment. There'd be this, they're there all the time, but in those 4 days, and especially May Day, it would increase and become a lot stronger. And so these Longboroughs actually existed all along the St. Michael ley line. There's many different ones stretching all the way along here, along with all the stone circles and things. And on that day, they would go to a hill that would be near here, and I don't know exactly where they used it, all along the ley line, and they'd put these huge piles of wood, trees and old wood that's died, and set them up. And then all the Druids and the Celtics would begin to do their drumming and all their ceremonies and everything else, praying for the return of the male energy connecting with mommy energy. And then on that moment, on that day, the sun would rise, and it would come down and pass through the lying burrow, down through the vagina, all the way down through the back, and strike the cervix. And the cervix, so you can't see it in this thing. I don't know if you can see it at all. It's really too bad. I'm going to have to get another one. There's a round lodestone at the back of here, a reddish color stone, which is the cervix of this. Let me see what the next one is. That's clear. You can't see it very well in here, but it's right back in here. And what's really interesting about this, it is a cervix and it blocks what you can find from behind there. But it is, that stone and only that stone is most of the time, and I've checked this out with some other people, because the first time I was there it happened, the second time it didn't. That stone is usually wet, almost all the time. Just that stone and nothing else. It looks like almost like a mucus that's over the top of it. And it was that way the first time when we came back with the filming screw. It was dry. And then since then I've checked with other people who have told me that it's as far as they know, it's always wet. So we happened to hit it. That made us think, is it tied to the moon cycle? Just like a woman or anything else? I mean, what is going on here on that whole thing? Okay, that's another subject. I'll come back to here. So that's the opening going down there. So that light comes in, goes way back in here, I don't know, it's 30, 40 feet or more, hits the cervix. When that does it, from their point of view, the male energy of the sun has entered into the female energy of the earth. And it's the moment when the creative energy returns to the earth. And that's a great celebration. And at that instant, they light the fire. And so as the sun is rising all across England, as it goes along there, these fires start at this point here on the eastern side, and these fires start striking one after another, after another, after another, all the way across as the sun rises across England. As the fire is lit, all the people in there, which have been waiting for this, they go out into the crops and into the fields where the crops grow, and they make love into the fields to put the creative energy of their creative energy back into their fields. They were banned by this by the Christians, do not do this anymore. This was too pagan. And though the Christians really did not understand anything that they were doing or really why they were doing it, what was going on. And after this, it leaves through there, it comes through, it passes through the man-made, or woman-made, I don't know which, the breast here, passes through, comes in, connects into these things, comes down, the male energy, comes through and goes straight through along the straight line and comes over here, and I believe goes straight on out like this. The female energy comes through, makes this loop, comes around and comes out like this, which reconnects with this over here and heads back out of here. And this is the best that I can see and understand of what's going on. And there is something about the way these energies meet in here that were very special to them. I'm not exactly sure what it was. I'm going to come back to this in just a little bit. Let's go back to the Christians now for a moment. The Druids are helping the Christians to start. That's pretty obvious. It's very obvious. And what the Christians started to do is that they, when they went to these stone circles, which were the places where the Druids and the Celtics did their ceremonies, and they took the stones and built churches on those spots. And they knew exactly where the dragon lines crossed, and that's exactly where they put the altar. The altar was put right there.
Since they left the dolmen, this is a typical dolmen site. You notice how large the stone is on the roof, and it's much smaller now on the sides. That stone is a sounding board, and the entire structure is musical. They would get inside and they would chant, the whole thing would vibrate. And many times they built the church on top of that and leave it intact.
Could you say that again on the mic, please, Richard? The mic
The
is
large
not-
stone on the
You
top.
have to turn the mic on.
Okay, there you go. The large stone.
Still not working.
There we go. The large stone on the top is like a drum head. It's a sounding board, and they would get inside and chant, and the entire structure was designed musically, and the proportions of the structure had to do with the special energy at that site. And when the churches were built on top of these sites, these dolmens were left intact under the altar, and the proportions of the church were designed on the same proportions as the dolmen underneath, and the musical structure of the church was designed on the same lines as well, so that this knowledge was preserved in the acoustical space of the church, and regardless of what was said in the church, it comes out meaning the same thing.
That's good. I like that. Well, they started slowly building their churches over all the places where it crossed. They went to the stone circles, started taking the stone circles, building their churches, and building their altars exactly where the dragon lines crossed. That's where they placed the altar. And so today, you have no less than 63 Christian churches in an absolute straight line running across England. And when you go and look at most of these churches were dedicated either to St. Michael or to Mary. That's why they're called the Michael and Mary lines. And you see Michael, and he'll be there with this dragon. You'll go to the doorway and you look up, here's this big old dragon, and Michael is shoving a sword down the dragon's throat. He's subduing the dragon lines. And by the Christianity taking over the old religion of the Druids. But it was the Druids who were helping the Christians. So what's going on here? Why would they do this? By the time, let me see what the next one is here. I can't remember right now. We need to go to Glastonbury now. And Glastonbury is the Druid center. This was an island called the island of Avalon, though it's no longer an island anymore. And on top of there was the Tour, which is the Tour is simply a Celtic word which means hill. And what you see up there is the St. Michael Tower. Sometimes the tower is referred to as the Tour, but it's really, this is a Tour, it's a hill. And there used to be a stone circle up on top of this place, but of course they built a Christian church right on top of it. And this is all that's left of it. It used to be big, well, it could have been too big because there wasn't much of a place up there. And let me see what the next one is. I can't remember. This thing has oh yeah, I remember now. But I don't think I'm going to get into that. You're looking at the top here. This is one of the ceremonies that we had up there. This is a look from the top of it. So you're looking at England. It's a very beautiful green place. And all this was filled with water. And every once in a while, these little hills would become an island. For some reason, I don't know how, all that water is no longer there anymore. Glastonbury was the place. This is where it all began. And By the time of approximately 500 AD, actually even before then, I don't know exactly what it is, I don't have my dates real clear, started somewhere in the 400 ADs. There began to be a problem throughout England in that the two religions of the Druid religion and the Christian religion were conflicting with each other. Primarily the Celtics were killing the Christians. There was a slight problem. And so Arthur came to this area, to another island that's about, I don't know, 5 miles or so away from this one here, and where there was an old Roman fort, and he rebuilt it into this beautiful castle that was called Camelot. It was a real place. It was really there, though there's not very much left of it anymore. And it was at Camelot where the Round Table was, and where the Knights Templars were trained. And it was the Druids, through Merlin, who trained these people how to do what they did, and primarily one of their major business or purposes was very mundane. It was to protect the Christians against the Celtics, so they wouldn't get killed, so they can go to their churches to keep this going. They got very good at that. And at one point, the Pope became very afraid of them, even though there was no reason to, I don't think. He did become afraid of them. He killed all of the Knights Templars. He had them all killed. But their purpose was to establish, to make certain that the Christian religion kept going. So why would the Druids help the other side? Again, the same question. It seems so incongruent until, according to Merlin, you begin to see what was going on here in a deeper way. Prior to the Christians coming here, they ascended into the earth. It was still ascension. It was not in the sense of going down or evil or darkness. They were ascending into the light, but from a different way. And they knew that there was another component. There was ascending away from the earth. But no one knew how to do it. The old writings of the Tibetans talk about how they tried to do it. They had tried to ascend away from the earth, but as far as they could get was the moon. And they didn't know how to do this, and it was Jesus that came in and taught them how to ascend away from the earth and to go out in these dimensional levels away from the earth instead of toward the center. And so the Druids wanted this to happen so that this new pattern, which had to be understood and learned, would be learned, and in so doing, they completely subdued themselves, allowing themselves to just be subdued for a while. It was one of the heads of the abbot of the Glastonbury Abbey, who went to this tower up here where we're looking off of, to that stone circle, and supposedly threw holy water on the dragon of the dragon line, the protector of the dragon lines at this place, forcing the dragon and all the elementary spirits into the earth. There was no forcing. Throwing water on a 250-something foot dragon isn't going to stop him. But he allowed himself to go in there because they allowed this to take place. And they then went around and burnt all the oak trees which were sacred in the forest, where all the elves and the spirits and all the little spirits of the devas of the land and everything, forcing them to go in so that this other kind of energy could get a chance to grow. That's been released now, by the way. There's a big change going on in the inner earth at this point. And what Merlin was saying is, yes, that had to go. It had to be. The ascended master, the people now started ascending away from the earth in dimensional levels, the ones I'm talking about, the fourth, the fifth, the sixth, the seventh, going up in these planes, learning to go away from the earth. But once it was established, what Merlin was saying, we're out of balance now. He says, we were out of balance before, going only into the earth. Now we've swung the other way, and we're going away from the earth. And he says, what the purpose of the crop circles is to be a program to re-educate us to the holiness of Mother Earth. And in these patterns are these sacred forms and all this sacred information. And that will eventually reconnect us, or hopefully reconnect us back to the earth again. What Merlin is saying is we need to now bring these two ascension processes back into one, which is already happening on the other dimensional levels. It's already occurring. But we got to bring it here on earth. This particular way is killing the earth, and we need to reestablish our connection with Mother Earth and see it as a living being. And this is the real purpose of the crop circles, is so that we can remember who we are. They're done in the crops. Like I said, they're done in the crops. And that was what was sacred to the Celtics and the Druids, was the crops. That was the whole purpose of all their ceremonies, was the growing of crops, of the cycles, and all the devas, and all the little spirits, and the life of the inner life of the earth. And that's why they're in crops. And they wait till the crops are about ready to harvest, which was the most holy moment of all of this. So when you see that and you understand, it all begins to start making sense of what's going on here. So according to Merlin, about 85% or more of all the crops come from the ascended masters in the earth. Another 10% or more are coming from the ascended masters who are ascending away from the earth. And a very small percentage is coming from what you would call extraterrestrial type beings who are cooperating in on all of this.
The crop circles, you mean? You said the crops, but you meant
The crop circles themselves. And it was real interesting when I sat down with Busty Taylor and we started communicating. I didn't know him. I never met him before. He never met me. We sat down and shook hands on the table. And this was after being there for about 3 weeks, and I had this crash course. I mean, I was just pulled from one place to the next place to the next place, and to get this very rapid image of what was going on. And I'm sitting there, like, wow, this is something I've never conceived of before. And I sit down with Busty, who's been studying this for 9 years. It's been his whole life. And I got done after 2 hours, and I looked at him, and he looked at me, and we realized we have exactly the same image of what's going on. He sees it exactly the same. He had one tiny difference, which was so beautiful. I'll have to come to it in just a moment. This was an oak tree, and this was another one. It was called Og and Magog. And they were the two original oak trees of the oak forest that was on the island of Avalon, which the Christians burned down so that all the devas and spirits would have no place to go. The Pope made it illegal for anybody to worship water, wells, the sun, the earth, the moon, stones, and to pray in the stone circles. All these things became illegal, against the law by Christian beliefs, for them to ever even do. They had to do it to get it going. This is the Abbey at Glastonbury, and you're only looking at a tiny little piece of this huge thing, which was placed right over one of the sacred wells. This is another piece of it, where it came down and extended around, and most of it, the framework was not, it would go way over to about here and back. This place must have been enormous at one time.
Henry VIII is the one who knocked it down.
The what?
Henry VIII is the one who destroyed Glastonbury.
I'll check that out. That's probably an interesting story too.
He couldn't compete with the church fairly, so he had to compete on terms that he understood.
Richard,
Okay.
Yeah, Henry VIII is the one who actually destroyed Glastonbury. He destroyed quite a few of the monasteries. It was basically because he was struggling with the papacy for control of the English church.
Thanks, Richard. On this, right on this place, right near the church of the Abbey of Glastonbury, is a site where the monks found the grave of Arthur and Guinevere in 1191. They then moved them and put them underneath the altar in the Abbey of the Glastonbury. And this is the cover, which is two Vesica Pisces, if you see, or one Vesica Pisces, two circles, which is the lid to the chalice well, which is the water that flows directly out of the monastery. The Druid school coming off the tour. It was the sacred well. It was the red water, and just a little ways away from here is where the white well came. This was the spot, according to what we were being told, was where the very first baptisms took place of Christianity. And if you go down further, this is where it ends. You see the water pours in, and they've made two Vesica Pisces where it flows in. This is Rudolf Steiner's flow forms that are coming in there, which are very beautiful. They were put in there. And this was this sacred water. There's supposedly all kinds of healings that go on there. That has been for a long time. It was more famous than Lourdes for a long time ago. And Cadbury Castle is Camelot. And this is the pathway leading up to Camelot. And there's not much there anymore. It's just this big sweeping hill, but you can see where they've carved everything out and all this stuff. And actually there's a lot of the castle supposedly still buried in there, but it's now private land. And they won't allow anybody to touch it. They just want to leave it alone. And I can understand that. But there was a major castle there at one point, and this is where the round table was. This is where all that took place. So, let me see if there's any more on this. I could go on longer in this, but I think you get the idea of what we've learned here is that about these stones, about the crop circles. If it's true, it'll be I'm sure it'll be made clear very soon as the complexity of these crop circles grow, as the inability of the governments to try to hide what's going on, and they're doing everything they can. The governments are very freaked out right now. There's some things that have happened while we were there. I'm going to repeat this, but I'm going to repeat it as a legend, okay? I'm not going to say it's true. One of the people that I was there knows one of the government, a very high up military person in the British Air Force. He's a major, and he was talking to her about what had happened right while we were there. I didn't even know this was going on. And if it's true, it's pretty remarkable. I don't know if we'll ever know for sure, but it is interesting. And she said he really believes it's true. The Air Force has been studying these crop circles since the beginning. And they have spent so much time looking at them, studying them, going through everything else like that, and they still don't know who's doing them or how. They don't know what's going on. You know, and especially in conjunction with the stuff that's going on Mars and all those other things like that, you can see why they might be a little concerned about the crop circles. And they don't trust it. They don't really know what it is or what's happening. The Druids, on the other hand, really want them to study it, obviously, if this story is true. They said that they finally gave up after the end of the 1992 crop circle, at the end of that last one. And the last one in that time was the Mandelbrot crop circle, which is a fractal geometry.
Dave get pretty smart.
Yeah, and the Mandelbrot crop circle, by the way, happened right near the house of Mandelbrot, which is where he lived. He actually lived. Usually I like to show you that on television. As it worked out, I'm not going to be able to do that. I have a great video to understand the kinds of things they're talking about, to really understand what fractals are about. It's another way of saying infinity. It's very beautiful to see it, but we can't do it this time. According to them, they gave up on the whole thing, and then while we were there in July, a crop circle formed at the end of the runway on one of the military compounds, right at the place where you take off, which makes it very hard because this is a totally secured area, and nobody saw it happen. And the very next morning that it did, they said, and this was in full view of several hundred people, and it was videoed. They were videoing these things as they were taking off. I guess it's part of their procedure, I don't know. But this plane took off, this jet fighter took off, lifted off the ground, went over the top of the crop circle, and disappeared. It was gone. They found the plane 1,500 miles away. And something very weird happened, and I don't know what it means. They found the pilot, and the pilot was dead, lying near the crop circle. I really don't think they meant to do that. I think that was an accident if that happened. He was obviously brought into the fourth dimension. It was probably a little bit too much for him. At any rate, that's what was reported, and it caused the military to go on red alert, obviously. And they then brought in all their machinery. They brought in guns and a whole military thing, cannons, tanks, everything else near Avebury. At this point, they were going to check out these stone circles and try to see who was doing this. They did this whole number, and according to this major, all they said was they were allowed to witness a crop circle being formed. And they said they all just stood there because they said they knew that there was absolutely nothing they could do. Whatever it was, whatever they witnessed, whatever they were allowed to witness, they realized that their guns and tanks and cannons were just totally useless, and that a whole new viewpoint has been arrived at from the British Air Force. I hope this is true. I'm sorry if this person got killed. I really don't think they meant to do that. It was interesting that they brought him back and sent him right there. But, so, maybe that's true, I don't know. If we ever find out, I guess we'll find out someday. Okay, I'm going to close this slide presentation, and we're going to have to get into something that's very important. This is of the Merkaba. Oh yeah, there's one more thing. I did forget this one last time. Busty Taylor had one little bit of information that I thought was so beautiful, and I just had to print it. So he gave this next slide after this one was Busty's. It's not mine. He gave it to me. And Busty said that that the legends talk about these ships that have landed for so long, these flying saucer ships. You know, not only the Dogons, but it goes back into the Celtic beliefs and everything else like that. And it's been going on for a long time. And he says, just look at the burial grounds of the Celtics, how they buried their kings and things, and look at this. He says they look just like flying saucers. I mean, they really do. I mean, you look at this, with this image of what you know, and look at that, and you can see another one over there and another one behind it, and they're just sitting all over. And I mean, I don't know if it's true or not, but boy, it sure does look like it.
That's a big area there.
Yeah, the person is buried inside the center.
How wide is that?
Well, you can see the fence over here. So if I had to guess, that's about probably 150 feet.
So every person is buried there?
I believe so. I don't know for certain. It's probably going to be somebody pretty important. Somebody pretty important. These are found all near the sacred sites. Near Stonehenge, you see them all around you. Pretty interesting, huh?
Why did farmers mow down the crops?
There was two reasons. The first one is that people go in here and trample the whole place all together and destroy their crop. So that's one. They try to get rid of it. The second, so some people, I've talked to many myself. Some of them, they don't care. Great, fine, go look at it. They don't really care. Other ones, they go out there and do it right away. The other ones feel it's too spooky, and they don't know what the heck it is, and they just want to get rid of them. And then you got other ones who think it's great, and they start charging money for people to go in there. So they got different attitudes about the whole thing. Yeah, you imagine you got hundreds and hundreds of people going there. If they charge £1 a piece, they're going to make them.
Drunvalo, when did the last military incident occur?
I believe it happened in July of this year. Yeah. When did the military thing happen? It was either June or July. Let's just make it safe, June, July, or August. Somewhere in there of this year. That's pretty good. Okay. Now we're going to wind up the slide presentation finally, and we'll go into the final phase of this.
6 minutes.
Okay, it's just about right. This is a Celtic doorknob holder. It's a plate where the doorknob goes through. And look carefully. You have the fruit of life with 13 circles with the Star of David clearly marked, and the Star of David inside the Star of David clearly marked. And here is the fruit of the flower of life patterns, intimately drawn, all inside of these things, with a circle with the two boundary lines around it and everything. Obviously, the Celtics had a pretty good idea of this information also. And it's you got your great void in the middle, and it's a doorway. It goes for a door. And this is in, I'm going to go through a bunch of places. This is in Crete, and you see the dolphins and all this stuff. And here again is the central information of the flower of life. This is, again, you'll see it. This is out of Turkey. These are the days of Genesis. Here, these two symbols are usually found side by side. First the 6 petals, then the 6 petals with the 6 around it on the outside, side by side. I know when I climbed Mount Sinai, where Moses, saw the burning bush, at the bottom of that mountain, there is a Coptic monastery called St. Catherine, I think it is. And they won't let you take any pictures in there, but when you go in St. Catherine, you look up at the ceiling, that's what's all over the ceiling. There's those things. Obviously, they knew it. We've seen it in Egypt. This one comes out of Tibet. That is a cover, a wooden cover, for holding a wooden box with a cover, and that is the seed of life. It's the 6 circles around, there's the seed in the middle, and it contained an instrument for planting seeds. And again, this is these circles that you saw came directly out of the flower of life. When you fill those in, you get a very familiar symbol, which is the yin and the yang. of the Taoism. It's a symbol for Taoism. And again, if you study Taoism and you study the I Ching, all this information is clearly in there. The same information, in some ways, put into words very, very clearly. This is Masada, Israel, where the Essene community started. If you go into the center of the Essene community, you'll find this church. You go into the center of the church, and I know this is a lousy slide because it's a copy from a copy, but it came from a friend of mine who went there. And right there in the center of the church is the flower of life, though that's all that's left of it is this outer component. If you can see it clearly, it's very, very clearly about that much of the flower of life, clearly marked in the bottom, showing how the Essenes understood this, as well as the Coptics, which we saw. You go into India and you look at the geometries that are going on there, like the Sri Yantra and all these other things. You start looking at this carefully, and you'll see the exact same linkage between them. In India, that's where the Nakals went, and which was from the Atlantean Mystery School, and all that knowledge was brought down there. This is a 2,000-year-old mantra, Hindu mantra for Tantra. And when you look at this carefully, coming from the inside out, you see those 4 purple triangles and 3 green ones. Well, what you got is the star tetrahedron, which in the creation process, conceptual process, becomes a cube, and you see that in here, and all of that begins and ends in a sphere, both the ovum and back to the final corolla. And around that you see 8 organic cells, which go to 16 cells, showing that they knew that it was a binary sequence 2,000 years ago. They put a dot on every other one, showing that the original 8 cells remain unique into themselves. And here you have the square forming the phi ratio, which is the symbol for life. I mean, that's when life happens. This is 2,000 years old. Now, how do they know this stuff? And this is something that I guess you're just going to have to wait for. I'm going to have to hold that. This next slide, we're not going to be able to reach it. Well, yeah, we can. You can go ahead and put this on there right now. Just get some shots on it. This is the slide that goes into the Temple of Abydos. And I said I'll be able to prove to you that high up in the Egyptian walls, they can show that that they can see the future. This slide proves beyond any doubt that the Egyptians could see the future, and so I'm going to have you come up here, and I'm going to take it out of focus, and you can go ahead and cut the film, and we'll have to catch the flying saucer. The visitations have been going on in England for a very long time, and perhaps way back in time. If you look at this image of the Merkaba, this is a burial ground of the ancient Druid Celtic religions. And look at the shape of it. It looks just like a flying saucer. This is probably about 120, 150 feet across there. These are huge. You'll see another one back there, another one over there, and they're just sort of scattered all around the countryside. I know they're all around Stonehenge. Some of them are right up close to Stonehenge. And they just seem to be like these little things that just sort of landed out there. And it's very interesting. Now we're going to close in on this now, which is where the flower of life was found. And if you look up here, you see the bee and the stalk, which is the Egyptian hieroglyphics for the left eye of Horus, the feminine school, and the emotional body. And over here, you can see an attack helicopter, a half sphere with an eagle on it, a tank facing back toward the helicopter, an airplane flying this way, and what looks kind of like an AWACS airplane flying this way, with these little things that we don't know what the heck they are. They could be Patriot missiles, or they are in that shape. But this is the only, this is depicting, there's only one place that I know of in the history of the Earth so far where the attack helicopter, the tank, and the airplane, and all of these things were in one war in large scale, and that was in the Iraqi war. And very possibly that's what they were talking about. It's truly a remarkable slide, and exactly what it means, I don't know. I was told to take this shot. It was done with an 80mm lens. This is almost 40 feet up to the top of here. It's very high in the top, which means if you go by what they believe, which the bottom band was the past, the band that's from about eye height to maybe 15 feet or so is the present, and everything beyond that is the future, then this must be far into the future, because it's right at the very, very top. And I guess, who knows? I don't really know, but it's still a remarkable photograph. I do believe, because of eyewitnesses that are friends of mine that I trust, that there is another incredible one, which is located at Dendara. There's a small room where you go off to the right, you lift up an iron grate, you go down, straight down into a little tiny room that is underneath there. And on that wall, I've been told that there's a depiction of the planet Earth as seen from the North and South America, as though you were looking at it from a satellite, with an extension cord hanging off of it with a plug on it. And over the other wall was a plug, a modern day looking electrical plug. And, but it was not plugged in. And if that's real, that's pretty good too. But I don't know if it is yet, but so until I actually see it, I can't say for sure. And this is a very important statement to realize. We are not human beings having a spiritual experience. We are spiritual beings having a human experience. We came from a higher level down here to a lower level. And it's now time to go back. And so this is the symbol of the flower of life from which all this information came out of, every bit of it. And this is the Merkaba, which this speaks of. And this is the signing off on the Egyptian Mystery School of Akhenaten, the Law of One. And this is Melchizedek Melchizedek holding the Holy Grail, which is the final bit of information that the world is about to understand from my way of seeing it. And the Holy Grail is what that understanding is, I believe, will begin to unfold, and that unfoldment will primarily come from England.